Hey, what's going on, everybody? Chris Meaney here of FTN, taking a look at the biggest risers and fallers in fantasy football drafts over the last couple of weeks. We're just days away from training camps opening up in the NFL, and before you know it, it will be week one of the 2021 season. So it is the midway point of July, which means draft season in fantasy football land. Drafts are certainly starting to heat up, and we have quite a bit of data that we can take a look at as well. So I wanted to take a look at ADPs over at NFFC, high stakes leagues where people are putting their money on the line before training camps open or we see any big news, because when news happens, we'll start to see that spike and we'll catch up. I'll catch up in a couple weeks and I'll show you the spikes that do happen. And certainly there's a couple players that I will talk about where we have seen them kind of trend in social media as well. So, a lot of beat writers just didn't have that opportunity last year to really talk up these guys. So I think it's going to be amplified here in this 2021 season. So again, NFFC, I took a look at ADPs from mid-May to mid-June, and then mid-June to mid-July, and in particular over the past couple weeks. So let's start with one player in particular. There's no player in the NFL that has leapfrogged more players at his position than Trey Lance of the San Francisco 49ers. It's kind of fitting, I guess. The 49ers leapfrogged a bunch of teams to take their guy with the third overall pick. And as you see here, Trey Lance has a wide outcome here in terms of ADPs from the past couple of months. May 15th to June 15th, quarterback 26, ADP 165 on average. June 15th to July 15th, quarterback 19, ADP 145. So Trey Lance over the last 4 weeks, the rookie has jumped inside the top 20 among signal callers, passing the likes of Ryan Fitzpatrick, Daniel Jones, Ben Roethlisberger, and Tua Tagovailoa. Lance now finds himself going inside the 9th round on average in high-stakes leagues, NFFC leagues, a min pick of 101, which means he's been selected in the 8th round of at least one NFFC draft this month, ADP 145. So that may seem like a high price to pay, a steep price for a guy who is yet to take a snap inside the NFL on a field. We don't even know if he's going to be the week one starter, and he played one game in 2020. As you see here, bringing up this board again, the statistics on the left, that's from 2019. Now, I don't care if you're a fan of North Dakota State or the conference or the competition. None of that matters, really, when you have a 28-0 touchdown to interception ratio. Now, maybe he has that because of the conference play. But when you do something like that, it's special. It really is. 1,100 rushing yards and 14 rushing touchdowns piques my interest as well. And if you watched him play in college, you see a mobile quarterback. The game is changing. Look at the top 6 quarterbacks going in fantasy football right now. They have a solid rushing floor. Russell Wilson, Jalen Hurts, guys that are going to rack up at least 500 yards on the ground, right? There's a trend here. We need rushing quarterbacks in fantasy football. There's a safety there. If Lance averages 40 rushing yards per game, it's like starting with a free touchdown. Kyle Shanahan moved up to get his guy. They got their guy. He's not going to wait around for Jimmy Garoppolo to figure it out. We know what Jimmy Garoppolo is. They hardly needed him to get to the Super Bowl a couple years ago, and you could argue that if they had a capable quarterback, maybe they win that Super Bowl, and potentially that's unfair to say. But Trey Lance is not going to be hanging around waiting behind Jimmy Garoppolo for too long. And once you hear word that he is balling out in camp, or that he is going to be the week one starter, or Jimmy Garoppolo is throwing picks left, right, and center in preseason games like he did a couple years ago, Trey Lance is only going to continue to rise up draft boards. We have him ranked aggressively over at FTNFantasy.com. Somebody has him as a quarterback 12. I don't have him ranked that high. I think he has upside to be a quarterback 15. I got him at 17. If he's the starter, he's going to be ranked as a QB1 because of his rushing floor and because of the weapons inside of this offense, inside this Kyle Shanahan offense. Yak monsters, George Kittle, Brendan Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. There's a lot to like about this San Fran offense. They're a win-now team. They were unhealthy last year. They're healthy coming in. They're 13-1 to win the Super Bowl. They have high expectations for Trey Lance. They got their guy. He's going to start fairly soon, and when he does, he's going to have upside each week to be a top 5 quarterback. So he's going to continue to move up draft boards. I think he can go as high as quarterback 15, so get him now while you can, because he could pass the likes of Carson Wentz, Baker Mayfield, who I already have him ranked ahead of Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins. We could see that as well. A shout out to his teammate Trey Sermon, who has also seen his stock rise over the past couple weeks. You see a board here with Raheem Mostert and Trey Sermon. This was from a Mean Streets show last week. Sermon has moved up. He was pick 92 on average, RB34 in June drafts, and now pick 76, RB29 in July drafts. A min pick this month of 51 and a max of 100 compared to 62 and 134 in May through June. So a 34 pick difference in terms of his max. You just can't wait it out on Trey Sermon anymore if you want him. If I had the choice between him or Mostert, it would be Sermon. I like him longer in terms of like just a dynasty standpoint. I don't think I'm in on either from a redraft standpoint. I want Trey Lance. He's going to run in all the touchdowns for the San Francisco 49ers this season. Speaking of rookie running backs, I'm going to stay here. There's a couple other rookies here, and sometimes we see the market adjust when it comes to these guys. And it certainly has with Javonte Williams, a new shiny toy for the Denver Broncos. We've seen him go from pick RB27 to RB23, average pick 60 to 53. So he hasn't moved up boards too much, but if you've been drafting best ball drafts over at Underdog Fantasy, the no RB approach that everybody seems to be talking about, you see there, Williams is sitting there. He's a great RB2, upside to be a high-end RB2, getting drafted now as a low-end RB2. So you got to remember that you take reports with a grain of salt, but it does, I mean, he did move up boards roughly around the time there was a report out of the Denver Post. A beat reporter had suggested a bold prediction that Williams would lead the team in carries. Now, if you asked him honestly, he probably would admit that it's not all that bold. He's very talented. He led the nation with 76 missed tackles forced last season. Only Najee Harris had more 10-plus yard runs than Williams' 42 last year. And a new GM in town that moved up to take Williams in the second round, signed Mike Boone recently. Look into that with a grain of salt. But also Melvin Gordon into his final year of a 2-year deal. Some off-the-field issues, could be suspended week 1, could just be cut from the team. And I thought Phillip Lindsay looked a little bit better than Gordon last season. But Lindsay suffered the season-ending injury, and Gordon took over and looked pretty good and got touches. So there's going to be touches in this backfield. I think worst case, it's a 40-60 split with maybe Gordon having the edge for the early parts of the week, but this could be a situation like Jonathan Taylor taking over or Cam Akers taking over. But I think Williams probably sits right in around RB23. It's into committee land. We'll talk about a couple other backs in there. Shout out to T. Higgins, who moved up just a couple spots at the wide receiver position, 27 to 25, but ADP has gone from 65 to 56. He has closed the gap on his teammate Jamar Chase, but not where Chase has moved. He's still ADP 55. So it's like right beside each other now. I think both guys could certainly finish as wide receiver 2s, considering Joe Burrow had 40.4 passing attempts last season, which was second to Ben Roethlisberger. More on Big Ben in a little bit. Elijah Moore has taken the biggest jump in terms of wide receivers. His max pick from May 15th to June 15th, pick 260, basically free. Wide receiver 62 on average, ADP 174. Now, over the last 2 weeks, so since July 1st, ADP of 142, wide receiver 56 on average, so he has passed sophomore wideouts like Jalen Reagor and Henry Ruggs. Max pick of 186, which is a 6-round difference from his max pick in June drafts, at least from May 15th to June 15th on average. It's pretty crazy. Jamison Crowder, don't worry about him. Elijah Moore, teammate of A.J. Brown. One more workout video with these two. He may jump up to the high, maybe just 50 or high 40s. It's certainly possible. Denzel Mims is falling, and Elijah Moore is looking great. He's looking real good. And A.J. Brown said that Moore was better than him, which, I don't know, maybe he's just being modest. But the dude can play. I'm excited about Elijah Moore. All right, a couple fallers. Big Ben. No quarterback has dropped as much as Big Ben. And to be fair, NFFC drafts, what I've noticed is a lot of quarterbacks, they're all falling in terms of ADP, but nobody is really jumping or falling over 5 or 6 quarterbacks like Trey Lance, jumping over those few, and then Big Ben. He was quarterback 20, pick 139. Now he's quarterback 24 and pick 162. So we're seeing a 32-pick drop, and Justin Fields, Tua, Fitzpatrick, Lance, of course, have all passed a 39-year-old quarterback, entering his 18th season, a league-high 40.5 passing attempts per game. He produced 3 top 30 wide receivers. Can he do it again? It seems like those 3 wide receivers in Claypool and Juju and Johnson are all going as top 30 wide receivers, so it's weird to see the quarterback fall down draft boards, but yet we like the wide receivers. But even still, we saw a dip in production last year, and his elbow has bothered him now for 2 straight years. I mean, he topped 18 fantasy points in his first 4 games, 6 of his first 9, and he only reached the 18 fantasy point mark in 2 of his final 6 games. He looked awful in the playoffs. I don't care that he threw for 500 yards in the playoffs. He had 68 passing attempts. He threw 4 picks. So if he's healthy, he's always going to have 600 passing attempts. He threw 600 footballs, at least 600 in 2 of the past 3 years. Injuries are a major concern. You want a mobile quarterback. I'm out on Big Ben. We're not talking super flex here. He could be a decent QB2, QB3 for you, but he's not moving around all that well, and he's not throwing the ball down the field all that well either. And the proof is in Juju's numbers, almost 100 catches, low A-dot. Miles Sanders and James Robinson, the final 2, and not a lot for Robinson. I just noticed Travis Etienne, who was drafted in the first round, and Urban Meyer kind of downplayed that, said he'd line up as a wideout, and I believe that. But, he talked up Robinson and he talked up Carlos Hyde. But Robinson, the minute that Etienne was taken in the first round, it just ruined his draft stock, and I think we're going to continue to see Robinson fall. He's going roughly RB 27. He's only dipped 7 spots in terms of ADP over the past month, but he's fallen and ETN's fallen. So I think people are just bypassing that committee. And then Miles Sanders, just a slight decrease as well. He was RB 18 from drafts mid-May to mid-June, and now Dave Montgomery and Chris Carson have passed him. So Sanders, instead of RB 18, he's now RB 20. Instead of ADP 33, he's now ADP 38. I thought he had a good season last year, 5.3 yards per attempt, but he was just limited to 12 games and didn't get a lot of carries, only 12 per game. 1 game with 20 carries. That was his first game of the season. He had a lot of catches early on, too. 15 targets in his first 2 games, and then he had at least 4 targets in 6 of his next 8, but then the drop started to happen. Just don't know. There's just so many question marks. So I get this. I think he's a solid RB2 with upside to be a high-end RB2, maybe a 1. I don't think anybody can question the talent and the skill set. Just new coaches in town. Jalen Hurts, who had over 200 rushing yards in parts of 5 games towards the end of the season, he could call his own number a couple times. They drafted Kenneth Gainwell, who has great hands. Sanders had those drops, which I alluded to, and then Boston Scott remains on the roster. Plus, they brought in Kerryon Johnson, who I don't think is a threat for touches. There's just a lot of moving pieces and a lot of uncertainty when it comes to Miles Sanders. So I think he'll stay in that range. A 0 RB approach, maybe a modified, where you take 1 RB and 1 wide receiver or Travis Kelce, and then you address it in rounds 3, 4, and 5, that second RB with a Miles Sanders or Williams. But you better act quick, because some of these guys are certainly moving up draft boards. Wow, I really butchered that ending, didn't I? Thanks for taking the time to hang out. We'll be back in a couple weeks to really dissect drafts from mid-July to the end of July. Any questions, don't be afraid to hit me up at Chris Meaney. All of this and a whole lot more, free article over at ftnfantasy.com. Have a good one. Cheers.